In the mid-1980s, a smooth and emotional pop song began climbing the charts and quietly became one of the most recognizable hits of the decade. The song was Something About You by Level 42. With its polished production, emotional lyrics, and one of the most distinctive bass lines in pop music, it sounded like the perfect 80s love song. But behind that smooth, radio-friendly sound was a band that had spent years building their reputation as serious musicians, long before mainstream pop radio finally caught on. And in many ways, Something About You would become the song that changed everything for Level 42. Before they ever had a major hit, Level 42 were already well respected in the music world. The band formed in England in the late 1970s and originally built their sound around jazz, funk, and fusion influences rather than mainstream pop. Their music was rhythmically complex, groove-driven, and heavily focused on instrumental talent. At the center of it all was bassist and lead singer Mark King, whose playing style quickly became legendary among musicians. King used a technique known as slap bass, which involves striking and popping the strings to create a percussive, funky rhythm. While slap bass had been popular in funk music, Mark King took the technique to another level, turning a bass guitar into both a rhythm and melody instrument. In fact, many fans of Level 42 originally discovered the band simply because musicians were fascinated by King's bass playing. Throughout the early 1980s, the band released several albums and built a loyal fan base, especially in Europe, but they still hadn't fully crossed over into mainstream pop success. That was about to change. By 1985, Level 42 began working on their new album titled World Machine. The band realized if they wanted to reach a larger audience, they needed to slightly evolve their sound. They didn't abandon their musical roots, but they started writing songs that were more accessible and radio-friendly. Something About You became one of those key tracks from that album. It combined everything that made the band unique: sophisticated musicianship, smooth 80s production, and a powerful emotional melody. At the same time, the song was much more pop-orientated than some of their earlier material. Lyrically, Something About You isn't a typical happy love song. Instead, it deals with a more complicated emotional situation. The song describes the lingering feelings that remain after a relationship has ended. Even though the relationship is over, the person still can't completely let go of the memories or the connection they once had. Many listeners relate to that feeling. Almost everyone has experienced a relationship where even after things end, there's still something about that person that stays with you. The emotional honesty helped the song connect with audiences around the world. When Something About You was released in 1985, it quickly started gaining attention on radio stations. The song climbed the charts internationally and eventually reached number 7 on a Billboard Hot 100 in the United States. For Level 42, this was a massive breakthrough. After years of building their reputation as a musicians band, they suddenly found themselves with a major mainstream hit. The success of the single also helped push the World Machine album to new levels of popularity. For the first time, Level 42 was no longer just known among dedicated fans or musicians. They had become part of a global pop landscape of the 1980s. Part of what makes Something About You such a great example of 80s music is its production. The track features lush synthesizers, atmospheric keyboards, and a smooth layered sound that defined much of the decade's pop music. Yet, at the same time, it never feels overly synthetic. The band's musicianship still shines through. Mark King's bass playing adds a rhythmic groove that gives the song energy and depth. The drums and keyboards create a rich, polished soundscape, and the emotional vocal performance ties everything together. It's the perfect blend of technical skill and radio-friendly songwriting. The mid-1980s was also the golden age of music videos, thanks largely to the growing popularity of MTV. The video for Something About You helped introduce Level 42 to even more viewers. Like many music videos of the time, it focused heavily on visual atmosphere and performance shots of the band. During this era, appearing on MTV could make a huge difference in an artist's career. For Level 42, the exposure helped bring their music to audiences who might never have discovered them through radio alone. Decades later, Something About You remains the most recognizable song in Level 42's catalog. It continues to appear on classic hit radio stations 80s playlists, and compilations. For many listeners, the opening notes instantly bring back memories of the mid-1980s, and for the band itself, the song represents the moment when years of dedication and musical experimentation finally paid off. Today, Something About You stands out as one of the most memorable pop songs of the 1980s. It captured the polished sound of the era while still showcasing the incredible musicianship that made Level 42 stand out from so many other bands. And decades later, that unforgettable groove and emotional chorus still remind listeners why this song became such a classic. Because sometimes even when everything else fades with time, there's still something about a great song that never really goes away.